Out of all the members of the Happy Zoo squad, I think Nero is like by far the most overlooked by both Shift Up and the fan base. If not one of the most overlooked characters in the game in general by both of these like groups of people. To this day, she is one of the least mentioned in discussions, one of the least appreciated in fan art, and the only member of her squad till this day without a costume. Not only that, but she is a lot less prevalent in both events and in like random encounters out of any member of the Happy Zoo squad from what I've seen. Like she pretty much only appears in events out of necessity because the Happy Zoo squad is involved, and then the developers have to remember, oh, there's also this member as well. Nero also exists, and we have to mention her in some way. And usually they try to make that mention as short as possible. And as sad as I think that is, I can't really blame either group of people for either overlooking or even outright forgetting Nero, purposefully or otherwise. Well, I guess I can blame Shift Up now that I think about it, because this Nikke really feels like she was designed on every level to be overlooked and forgotten, unfortunately. In terms of personality, for example, she is the one that stands out the least out of all her squad mates. With Biscuit, even though I don't like her that much, she at least is a character I'll definitely remember, even if not for particularly good reasons. And she is also one of the most excitable like characters in Nikke. Like whenever she's on screen, it's difficult to ignore her. You know, she's very in your face and pretty much demands your attention on every scene she is in. Leona, also, despite being a more mature type character, one that's not as loud or excitable as Biscuit, is also a character that stands out a lot. She's very charismatic. She is like her presence is equally notable, and she stands out even if in a different way just as much as Biscuit, exactly due to that charisma and that maturity and that, well, let's just say get moe like sexiness kind of mommy vibe that she has. She's a really fun character in her own way as well, and that helps her stand out and be easy to remember and to notice in the scene she's in. But aside from a few definitely very funny and creative jokes made about her, Nero, on the other hand, doesn't stand out that much personality wise. She's a much more demure character. She keeps to herself a lot of the time and just fades into the background because she's more quiet, you know? And so she doesn't stand out or is as memorable as some of the other characters. And there are ways to make these kinds of characters stand out when in the presence of these comparatively more loud and attention grabbing like memorable characters. Obviously the concept isn't like bad from its very inception. For example, we have Edme. Edme is a character a lot of people remember and like, including me, obviously. And she is this kind of more quiet and demure character of her group as well. The difference is that she acts more like the straight man, or I should say straight woman in this case, to her group shenanigans, being the closest to a like normal person in that whole squad, and that makes her more demure and quiet attitude not only memorable but helps her stand out despite those, or in fact because of those. But since Nero is obviously as strange and as unusual as most of her other squad mates, the role of straight man, or again, straight woman, or I guess in her sense, the mommy or the more mature, the adult of the situation, essentially, role falls on Leona. And so Nero, in that sense, loses the only way a character like her could stand out more in a group like this. Combine this with her being like undisputedly the worst member of her squad gameplay wise, as well as, and this is the worst part, the only one to be overshadowed by another character in her event, because each girl from Happy Zoo has her own like particular event, right? Biscuit has Bow Wow Paradise, Leona has Lion's Heart, and I think Nero's event is Nyanya Paradise, something like that. I'll put it on screen just in case I'm remembering this wrong. But in any case, uh, since they are a squad designed to take care of the animals in the arc, obviously all of these events include the animals they take care of quite heavily. They feature them quite heavily, and they are protagonists in those stories. And obviously, the events are based on them, they are the focus. But the animals in both Lion's Heart and Bow Wow Paradise are always the object of focus. They're never the main characters, the people who develop the most and who end up stealing the show. They are more like plot devices, which helps to keep the focus, even if how to better like care for and treat these animals is the focus of the event. The focal character is always the associated squad member, right? The animals are always the focus of the event, but they never steal the spotlight, is the best way I could describe this. And that happens with every single one of these events except for Nyanya Paradise. As most people who play that event will know, Nero, even in her own event, kind of fades into the background in favor of another character who gets the spotlight, which is Ruru, the little cat that the event is actually based around. And I don't dislike this. Obviously, I love Ruru and I love her story. It's one of legitimately the most tragic, in the best way possible, the most tragic stories in Nikke, and one that brought me and a lot of other people to tears. I won't spoil it, but if you played the event, you should know exactly why. And so I don't dislike the event. I don't wish that they would change. I think it's perfect the way it is. But there are obviously consequences to doing something like such a cool story focusing on an animal character, right? Which is that it takes the focus away from the Happy Zoo member, from Nero, and thus makes it so that she doesn't stand out and is memorable even in her own event, you know? And so she, again, it really feels from every part of her character, from the personality to like the gameplay to even what's supposed to be her event, her time to shine, her chance in the spotlight, to finally have the focus on her. It really feels like she was designed to just not be memorable, to just never catch anyone's attention, to be overlooked. And you might wonder just by looking at the character, oh, but the design, like people will obviously remember such a bold design, right? This definitely stands out from like her squad mates. But not only is that a bad thing, like she's only remembered for the most superficial aspects of her character. Even that would be bad already. But in addition to that, she's not only memorable for her most superficial characteristics, for her design, but that design only stands out from her squad mates in a really bad way. Because while obviously, given the game we're talking about, the outfits for both Leona and Biscuit are obviously very sexualized and unrealistic, right? They at least convey the vibe of more casual clothes someone would probably wear if they were trying to be cute to someone, which both of them are, to be fair, that would still be functional enough in a more laid back and casual job such as caring for animals, right? And so, while these clothes are obviously not the most realistic ever, they still like seem reasonable. You can suspend your disbelief and like really like accept that for the setting and for the kind of game that Nikke is, this makes sense, right? But Nero's like costume, the design of her outfit doesn't look like simply a very sexual like outfit to look cute while taking care of animals in a laid back manner, like the outfits of the other members of her squad look. It doesn't look in any way like reasonable or sensible by any metric, by any angle you look at. Like, I'll just be upfront about this. Like, Nero looks like a skank. Like, she looks like someone who wouldn't be like at a animal shelter taking care of cats. She looks like she would be hanging around in the back alleys of the Ark, offering up her services to any man that would cross those parts of the setting. Like she legit looks way more like a skank than the actual character that's supposed to be an actual skank in the world of Nikke, which is Viper. And you might say, oh, but why is that such an issue? Nikke, as you said, is a game all about the sexualized designs. It's kind of the point, right? Yeah, but there's a very big difference between something sensible but still sexualized, like what the rest of the members of her squad were, as well as something more like 90s superheroine sexualized or more cute anime girl sexualized, which are the more prevalent vibes for the Nikke designs, and again, as I said, just outright looking like a skank, like Nero does. Like, even for a game like this, which is known as the haha jiggly ass game, right? This genuinely stands out in a bad way due to how sexualized it is, especially in the way that's sexualized, especially given like the setting she's in, like what's supposed to be her role in the arc, and like especially in comparison to her squad mates. Yes, it's a design that stands out both in the contexts of her squad as well as in Nikke as a whole, but it stands out in a really bad manner. So not only is she only memorable for her superficial characteristics, but even in that sense, she's memorable in a bad way. She's memorable as an example what you shouldn't do, even if you're trying to make sexy designs. Like this is an example of how not to make a sexy design, especially for this type of character. And the sad part is that this is a very easy fix. Like, you want to make her look like she belongs in with the rest of her squad, make an outfit that looks like laid back and cute, but still sexualized in a reasonable way that makes it like sensible for the context she's included in, like her squad mates. Just put her in this very famous outfit. If it even fits with her color scheme, it's perfect. So yeah, just a very unfortunate situation overall. And that's legitimately very sad because, again, Nero's not a bad character. Like, she clearly like has potential. Like, having a more laid back and like demure character in a squad of essentially sunshines in the form of people, right? Like two balls of sunshine, having this character that stands out as more demure and that keeps to herself in that way is an interesting concept that, as I said, was already executed even in Nikke quite well. And it fits very well with the theme of her representing cats, obviously. She is also, in general, just a really cool character. Like, from interacting with her both outside of her event and in it, even from the brief mentions that she gets in the game as a whole, you can see that she's a character that's set up for a lot of like interesting jokey moments. Like, she could really have been better utilized in the comedic sense, as again her squad mates are. She is also just a character that, much like her squad mates, clearly cares for the animals of the arc. Just as much, if not more than them, you know? And the concept of, again, event story that doesn't particularly like focus on its what's supposed to be its central character is not really, like, again, from its inception, a bad idea. In fact, even though a lot of people criticize that, I still think that if you want to do that, the best way you can execute that idea is in the form of events like Mudfish or Unbreakable Sphere. Finally remember the actual name of that event. Where, even though Siren is not exactly the focal character, the one that develops the most or that is the most important, the protagonist, the one that moves the story, her participation is still like very notable, and she still gets like a lot of development and interactions and focus during that event, as well as a lot of really cool and really memorable character moments that still like burns her in the mind and in the memory of players. And so there's nothing really about Nero from the character's inception that's really bad. Like, all of the ideas here, even the more slutty design again, were executed very well by other characters. So Nero is just unfortunately a really good example of like a wasted opportunity. This is a character that could have been really great and could have lived on again in the memory, in the minds of players, like really well, that could have stood out and made an impact like a bunch of other characters have, if those concepts, those pretty interesting concepts that they build the character around, were simply better executed. And yeah, it's just a sad situation because while her being overlooked makes a lot of sense, it didn't need to. They could have like done something great with this character and just failed to do so. Unfortunately, they just really missed the mark. They had the good ingredients, but they couldn't cook it into a good meal, unfortunately. And we just ended up with a very forgettable character as an unfortunate result. But yeah, I'm not the biggest YouTuber, obviously, especially not in the Nikke sphere. But even then, I genuinely hope that, despite me being so critical of the character, I legitimately don't hate her, like at all. I really wish she, these concepts, this character concept that she has, were executed better, and that she was legitimately a more memorable character, and that she wasn't so overlooked by the fan base. And I really hope that this video will at least like help with that, make you remember her and appreciate not only the potential but the interesting things, as minor and as few of them as they are, the interesting and genuinely cool things that they were able to do with the character, the really cool elements that are already there and that I think deserve to be appreciated more. So yeah, I legitimately hope that this video serves not only as a criticism of Shift Up's handling of the character, but as a way to make her at least slightly less overlooked by the fanbase, even if by a fraction of a percentage, you know? A pretty like vain hope, let's be real, but a man can dream, right? And that will be it for today. If you like this video, please do all the normal YouTube stuff, you know, like, comment, subscribe, etc. And I genuinely do hope to see you next time. If you really liked it, I'd also really appreciate if you could support me financially, either through a one-time paid comment donation or by joining my membership, where for $1 a month, you get to participate in exclusive polls in order to decide which videos I'll make next. Like, which of my plans should I focus on? Which of the content I have in mind do you want to see first? You know, that kind of thing. As well as get your name put in this fancy little screen right here. You know, just as a small gesture of appreciation, exactly for your monthly support. But of course, no matter how much you choose to give me, as well as if you choose to give me anything at all, do know that I really appreciate any cent you're willing to throw my way, as well as just the fact that you're watching this video up to this point at all. But with all that stuff out of the way, I think it's finally time to, as always, bid you guys farewell. Obscure Anime out.